Again, Chairwoman, let me ask you a couple of questions here, and this goes to a couple of the observations that Mr. Markopoulos made, and one was the vast differences in fraud cases that he was focused on that had come from industry tips as compared to those who had come from an audit. And clearly there, his desire was to try to get resources into running down these tips that are turned in. But let me just read you what he said in his testimony here before the House, and then get your comment on it. He said, first, I would replace the senior staff at the SEC because they have the wrong senior staff right now. And then I would go to the bottom of the organization. You need to change who the people on these teams are down at the bottom. They can't be young 20-somethings without industry experience. You need to get higher, senior, seasoned professionals. And the third thing you need to do, you need an office of the whistleblower to centralize these thousands of complaints that they get so that they're handled ad hoc by 11 regional offices. You need one centralized location, the office of the whistleblower instead. That's his view on that. Now, I know some of the senior staff has stepped down since that hearing. What do you make of the other suggestions?
I'd be happy to address those. Let me start with the Office of the Whistleblower to handle complaints. First of all, we have asked Congress to give us, to enact a whistleblower statute to give us the authority to compensate whistleblowers in the hopes that they will bring us well-formed and well-developed evidence of fraud that the SEC can then prosecute much more quickly. And we're very hopeful that that will pass, and it was also included in the administration's legislative package.
And the concept of the Office of the Whistleblower instead of doing it through 11 regional?
In fact, very shortly after I arrived, I learned that we receive between 700,000 and 1.5 million tips every year at the SEC. We are a tiny agency to handle that kind of volume. So we brought in, and they come in, as Mr. Markopoulos points out, every district office around the country and multiple offices in Washington. There's no central computer system. There's no tracking. There's no ability to look for a trend or a pattern of conduct across complaints coming from different areas, and there's no capability to combine that information with external sources of information. I brought in the MITRE Corporation's Center for Enterprise Modernization almost within a month after I arrived, I believe, to do a top-to-bottom review of exactly how we're handling all of these tips and how we might get to a system that could centralize them for triage, tracking, and resolution purposes. They've completed phase 1 of the work, which was a complete review of all existing processes. We're in phase 2 now, which will create new procedures for the entire organization. And then phase 3 is procurement of a technology that will provide a centralized IT solution for handling these tips agency-wide. So we're moving very aggressively on that count.
Let me ask then one other question he brought up while I have time. He said he thought the SEC was over-lawyered, to use his words, and he believed, and the SEC officials later affirmed, that there was a fundamental lack of understanding of some of the more intricate aspects of the financial markets within the SEC. The exception of that he cited was Ed Munyon in the Boston office, who'd actually been a trader and been a portfolio manager, but therefore was frozen out by the Washington and New York offices, which he viewed also as being over-lawyered. Can you comment on this idea of the SEC being over-lawyered and that kept them or maybe prevented them from uncovering the Madoff incident over the years? And I know you've taken some reform measures already, but what specifically is the SEC doing to address this problem?
I'd be happy.
Maybe along the lines that we had talked about with him, bringing in retired people who really had the kind of experience in the market that they could identify scams like this. And, well, just like Ed Munyon, people like that.
Let me start by saying that we have really an amazing staff at the SEC. We have people who are committed to their core to serving the public interest, to enforcing the law, to getting to the right answer that will serve investors. And it's important to be said because it is in fact true, and that is the backdrop against which all the changes are being made, that we have something very important there that we need to grow and provide the resources and the training to make better. That said, we are recruiting actively for people with trading experience, risk management experience, portfolio valuation experience, forensic accounting, financial analysis. I mean, Wall Street's bad news in terms of having to lay off many people has been very much good news for the SEC, and we're able to recruit people with tremendous industry experience and expertise and bring them into the SEC, and we're taking full advantage of that opportunity right now.
Thank you, Chairwoman Schapiro.